Let's discuss this further with political analyst from the Institute for Global Dialogue, Sanusha Naidu. Sanusha, very good afternoon. Let me first give me a comment on what we were just listening to, and I'm sure you've listened to it earlier. I'm sure you were able to see it as well. What are your thoughts generally?
Good afternoon to you and the viewers. I think it's basically the president trying to offset what has been an issue that has become quite serious in a sense of public opinion and the public outrage and pushback and criticism of the amount of money that's going to be spent on a flag that's going to be the flag mast is going to be about 100 meters or more. Questions about its kind of qualities of glowing in the dark. I mean, all of this comes at a time where the president, I think, is facing a lot of pressure in terms of trust, in terms of confidence in government, but also in terms of the ability to say, well, is this the most important project right now to put on the books of government? And I think his response was, I'm finding it, one, in terms of whether he sees it, his response in jest, or is it being facetious in a sense to say to the minister, well, what do you think? You called me up and you're saying that there's this whole outrage about this flag. What is your position on this, and what do you think you should have been doing as a minister in making a decision on this? Do you have to call me up and say, what do I do, or do you make a decision to say, given the circumstances, given the context, how do I respond to it? And I think that's what I found interesting. The president always uses humor as a deflective strategy, but the question also remains in terms of the underlying interpretation, and that is whether he was being facetious in terms of the fact that this is a minister who's got this position and should be able to make decisions in terms of his portfolio and what the implications are.
It is, isn't it? Because it's almost admonishing his own minister. I mean, they sit in cabinet. For him to be speaking about that particular conversation in public after such an uproar, I don't know. You have to ask yourself what's going to happen the next time he sits with the minister.
Indeed. And I think it's also important to raise the point around, the feasibility study costing this much, and then cabinet approving the feasibility study for a project of this nature. What does this mean? At this point in our body politic of the state, the question is, how is the minister and this performance appraisal and these performance contracts or these KPAs and using the kind of business model to hold ministers accountable in terms of their performance and so forth? How is this aligning to what we are seeing on a daily basis in terms of whether or not this accountability and these performance contracts are supposed to come out and supposedly create a KPI for ministers in government, and of course holding them accountable? Is it working? For someone like this to say, for the president to admit and to openly say it at a gala dinner of stakeholders, to say that, we're listening. The challenge is not whether you're listening. I think sometimes they're very tone deaf about what they want to listen to and what they don't listen to. And I think this situation around the flag issue is, again, the question of arrogance, the question of, are they really listening? Or is it just the question of saying, well, I've dealt with this. The minister called me. We use a consultative forum. We have a conversation, etc. Is it enough? I don't know.
I want to talk about that, we are listening bit, because that's almost spinning it, isn't it? To say, listen, you know what, yes, it may have been not the right thing to do, but hey, you know what, we've actually heard you. Is it a positive way? Do you think there's some people that are looking at this, hey, you know what, yeah, they are listening. It's fantastic.
I'm going to be slightly facetious and say they're listening, but they're not hearing. I think it takes a point at which the outcry became so incredibly pervasive, in the sense that in a time where we've just had, I think, the most aggressive central bank approach, the Reserve Bank approach to containing inflation. The fact of the matter is, we've heard the leader of the SACP say that our economy is not going anywhere. there's a serious crisis in terms of the economic trajectory of the country. All of these things are reaching such a crescendo in this country in terms of where inflation is. And inflation is important because of how dependent we are on imported goods and the model of our economic development growth framework, that to spend this money may not seem a lot in the eyes of those who said go ahead with the feasibility study, but it's definitely a lot. So I think you may be listening, but you're not hearing the message that's coming through.
Yeah. Sanusha, a quick one for me. Should Minister Mthethwa be concerned at all, maybe about his position because of this?
I don't know. I think in this year, it's an elective conference year for the party. I think everybody's got their own dynamics and political aspirations. Whether this is where he gets wrapped over the knuckles, or he gets admonished, as you said, or it's a more serious tone in terms of this potential reshuffle that we're hearing about, it's very difficult to say. But I think there are a lot of ministers that should be looking towards their portfolio and asking themselves, should they be there in any event?
All right. Thank you so much. Good speaking with you. Political analyst from the Institute for Global Dialogue there, Sanusha Naidu.